figures out this week show that property prices for new homes have fallen to 2001 levels, and the average asking price of a house is now below €200,000.
With another high-profile all-stop auction this week, should we be foregoing estate agents in favour of auctions to buy and sell our homes? Here with this is Carl Dieter of Irish Mortgage Brokers and Carol Talon of Buyers Brokers. A very good morning to you both. Many thanks for coming on. This week we just had the latest study out to show what we all knew: house prices are continuing to fall. A slight discrepancy between the two figures in Dublin: 47% for My Home and 51% for Daft. Carol, were you surprised about this? Do you think that we're over the worst of it?
I'm not at all surprised. In fact, I think most people might even be a little confused, because we've been talking about a 50% drop in the overall market since last year. So actually every time a report comes out reporting another monthly drop, it actually confuses buyers. Again, it's difficult to say because there are so many mini markets all around the country, and indeed around every city, not just Dublin, that it does confuse buyers. But in actual fact, if you look at the drops, they can be quite dangerous, because apartments have actually dropped 65, 70 and up to 75%. And then if you look at three-bed houses in, say, elements or parts of South County Dublin, and they haven't actually dropped 35%. So buyers still need to be very careful when they're looking at these statistics. Don't be waiting for this golden 50% mark, because in fact you might find yourself actually paying more than a property is worth. So in some cases the drop will be much larger than 50%.
It seems as well, Carl, though, that there's been a drop in the second quarter of this year. With these recent results that have been issued to us, that prices have fallen in the last 3 months even further.
It looks that way. What I would say is that one of the reports in My Home said that prices are back to 2001 levels. I think that's important to realise the relevance of that, because it was around 2000-2001 that house prices really broke away from their historic growth rate. So if we're back at that now, I think it is a sign that we're starting to get towards the land of sensibility, towards having genuine prices and a genuine market back. Some auctions are going to go out there and they're going to clear. Then there's others, like the GMAC auction in Cork, that brought all of these properties out, and it effectively fell flat in its face. Only 2 of them sold. So it's really a case of sellers selling the property correctly and buyers having realistic expectations. And I do think that we're actually getting quite close to that, and that most of the hard work is over.
Well, we'll have a good indication this week, because the next all-stop auction is Thursday. Yeah. And we have a couple of properties to show viewers at home that are going up on the market. The first one we have is
in Dublin 8, yeah, John Dillon Street.
And that's for 55,000.
55,000 euro, folks.
But again, I'd be at pains to point out that this is much smaller than any of the one-bed apartments, and in fact possibly even smaller than some of the studio apartments you'll find in Dublin. It's under 300 square feet. So there is a small yard attaching. But I think the history of this property is that it was originally, there was an error in planning. So construction started at either end of the street, and then they realised as they got close that they hadn't actually left enough space. So in actual fact, I think it was meant to be a coal bunker or a shed. So I think to call this the smallest house in Dublin is probably a bit of a misnomer here. What I would be saying to buyers is that even at 55,000, they could probably do better. I certainly wouldn't like to see this price jumped up in the auction, because there's very little value to be had in something that has so little scale. Okay,
there's a second property here that we'll want to look at. It's on Iona Road. It's in Dublin 9. This is valued at 360,000. It's a 3-bedroom property.
And actually, this is a very good road. It would be an excellent price. In fact, some houses on this road at varying stages of completion. Some are in very poor condition. Some would have had work started, then owners run out of money. So there's projects ongoing, and they're actually asking for almost double. So it'll be interesting to see. I actually think that this could be one where the reserve will actually be exceeded. And some of the reserves for this Thursday's auction are a little high. You know, they've certainly jumped since last April, but actually I think this is one that we could see exceed the reserve.
Okay, the last one we have.
Well, when you mention Killiney, you're going to think it's going to cost maybe both arms and at least half a leg. This is selling for 200,000.
Yes, and it's actually 2 properties. Now this is It's a very interesting one. The site is very small, so you're talking about 2 houses. Now they're at partial completion, but actually they're at quite advanced stage, so it wouldn't require a lot to complete. And actually, what you do see in this image here, the beautiful sea views.
Yeah.
It's absolute. Well, actually, I've been up to that property. It's quite difficult to get into. Parking may be an issue, but it's a fantastic property. It's a fantastic double property if they were to be merged. But actually, I think there will definitely be a buyer there when you look at the potential for two lots. Again, this is one I feel will make over the 200,000.
But Carl, people need to realise that we're talking also a proposed interest rate hike, aren't we? Isn't that what's coming down the track?
The European Central Bank have a meeting this Thursday, and we're expecting an interest rate hike. That tends to be the consensus view. I always say that you can't bank on it until they deliver it. They could make some decision that will surprise everybody, but if we do get an interest rate hike, everybody's tracker mortgages are going to go up in price. People with variable rate mortgages are going to see their prices go up. More importantly, any buyers out there are going to see the cost of new credit increase in price. There was also an article in the Sunday Business Post that mentioned that banks have an intention to increase the prices that they charge for new credit or new mortgages by far more than whatever the ECB do, because it's one of the few ways that they can actually get money back into the coffers, and that's something else that buyers have to be aware of. Mortgage prices are only going one direction, and that's up.
Okay, what kind of hike are we expecting approximately?
I think that generally by the end of this year, the standard variable rates will be at or above 5% across the board.
5%?
At least.
Okay, what is this going to do to the market?
It's hard to say, because what it means is that only the most motivated buyers who are willing to take on those credit terms are going to look for credit. At the same time, the mortgage amount that we're seeing delivered is at the lowest in 40 years. I mean, you're looking at a 90% contraction in the credit market, and that is just absolutely huge. It means that the money is not physically in our banking system to lend to people so they can buy, even if they want to, and banks are using any excuse not to give people mortgages. So on one side, you've got property prices that are falling, high unemployment, you can't get credit, and I do think that for the medium term that means prices will continue to descend. Having said that, at some point the credit market will turn. At some point money will start to flow into the system again and loosen up a little, and that's when it can actually turn quite quick. And obviously if some competition comes in as well, that would be a very welcome addition to the mix.
Well, if you are selling your house, Carl, I mean, I suppose we're seeing houses come back now for auction, which we never did, for the last while.
That's right.
Why? And do you think that is a good way to go?
There's many advantages, and actually in a very uncertain market or a non-functioning market like we're in at the moment, because of our lack of house price data, achieved price data in Ireland, that actually auctions are probably one of the few verifiable sources of property prices. So from that point of view, auctions, the advantage for sellers and in fact for buyers is that you can actually gauge market value and you can gauge market interest. One of the important things to note about market value is that generally auctions would be dictating what the market value is. However, that's really only true for a functioning market, which we're definitely not in yet. We would like to think we're on our way to it, but we're definitely not there yet. However, I mean, when it comes to success at auction, what makes an auction successful unusually, it's actually the same factors make a successful auction for both the buyers and the sellers. I mean, that really comes down to product selection, so property selection. The auctioneers really need to make sure that the house is one that's suitable for the current market. So who's buying at the moment? If first-time buyers at the moment are buying, don't try to auction investment properties, because obviously the demand isn't there. So the basic rule is give people what they want, price for the market. So if we're in an uncertain market and you want people to buy, they must be compensated by offering at a lower price. So give the people what they want, and what they're willing to pay for it will dictate market value.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens at this ALSOP auction on Thursday. It'll give us a good indication, and we'll be talking to you over the next couple of days after the auction to have an analysis of it. And many thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Now, yesterday we had image consultant Francis Jones on the show with some tips on what to wear for interviews.